Okay, well, let's go for it. My name's Wilma Holly. I do the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program at the Extension Office, and I'm going to be talking to you about worm composting today.
And my name's Tracy Troxler, and I'm with Sunshine Community Compost, and we're a nonprofit organization serving Manatee and Sarasota County, and we're really focused on spreading awareness about composting, community composting, resource recovery, and zero waste. So we're setting up education and action programs around the region to do that. Okay? And I'm going to be talking about community composting, which is just another scale of composting and provides different opportunities for people to enter into the composting process.
So with worm composting, what you really want to do is just replicate the habitat that the worms would have out in the yard. There's actually around, well, depending on which book you read, there's anywhere from 4,500 to 6,000 species of earthworms, but there's only about 7 that really work good in a bin. And the main one that's used is the red wiggler. And because they're surface feeders, you can't use a night crawler that needs to burrow 5 feet into the ground because you'd have to have a huge bin and you'd have to keep your house 50 degrees or, Florida just doesn't work for that. So you're replicating the habitat of the red wiggler, and they work the best because you can easily manipulate the habitat. They're very easy to change and work with. So what I do, you want a dark colored bin because earthworms are very sensitive to light. You drill some air holes in the top, glue some screen on. You can see I hot glued this. Some people use caulking, however you get it attached is fine. And then I put in some moist bedding, and newspapers are really easy to tear into strips. You can tear them that way, but if you go against the grain, you're going to be ripping all night long. But grain, just really easy. And then just, you moisten it. Pretty easy. You want it so that when you bring it out, you get a few drops, but not too much. You can see 2 or 3 drops of water, and that's all you want. It's a little bit moister than a wet sponge. That's your bedding. Food is all your kitchen table scraps. Melon, rind, banana skins, apple cores, anything like that you're not eating. You don't want to waste your food and just throw food in there. Sometimes people have bananas that get too ripe and they might throw those away. They love that kind of stuff. Sometimes I grind it up because then it's available a lot quicker to them. Sometimes I freeze it first because then it breaks down faster because they have little tiny mouths. See, their mouth is not very big. So if I break it down for them, then they can eat it faster. And yeah, I'll catch my foot over a little bit. So they need moisture, they need air, moisture and air, and the right temperature. They're happiest between like 57 to 75 degrees. In the summers in Florida, it gets pretty hot, but I know a lot of people that keep them out in the summer. I happen to live in a house where I can keep them in the house, put them in a spare bathroom or something, or in my bathroom. It's not spare anymore, but and they do well, but I could keep them out under the shade tree, and in the winter I do put them outside because it's much cooler. But and I know a lot of people that keep them out in the shade because you're keeping a moist bedding in there, and they're bedding, in here in the bin under a shade tree. They're not going to get as hot in the summer anyway, so they're going to stay low enough. They might stress a bit, but not
Do you
too
keep
bad.
the lid on in the bathroom?
Yeah, off and on. If I get it a tiny bit wet, I might take it off. I never have to worry about them escaping when the lid's off. Sometimes when the lid's on, if I keep it a little bit too wet or the air's not circulating, then they'll get out. And these lids, believe it or not, don't seal really well. So if I put the lid on, I have to then put a rock or some kind of weight on top because they can get out. But with the lid off, I very seldom have them get out because the air circulation and everything is perfect, as long as I have enough food. Sometimes if I don't put enough food in there, but yeah, I never really have a problem with them escaping. And then for harvesting the castings, for harvesting the castings, you can see there's nothing on this side. It's kind of hard to see, but there's nothing on this side. I'll start feeding over here. It's just about ready to harvest in about another week or so. I'll put some food over here, a couple banana peels, apple cores, whatever. I put the bedding over there, and once they get this food gone, see they still got a banana peel or two in here. They'll finish that. They'll all migrate over here. I don't have to do any of the work. They do it all for me. Some people will take it out, put it on a shower curtain, put little piles, put light on it, and then they don't like light, so they go down to the bottom, you scoop off the top. But why go through all that hassle? That's a lot of work. So I just let them migrate over. And there's a lot of worms in here. You can't really, she passed the plate around, but they're all down in there. That's where the food is.
Mine's in my berries thing all around.
Yeah, they're going to, and you don't have to do it. And this is one of the best soil amendments that you can get. Any kind of compost. It's great soil amendment.
So all the residue you pull out to put around your plants or whatever.
This is all the castings, all this, and you just sprinkle some around the plants. Well, yeah, you don't really want to get the worms in, and there are cocoons in there. The cocoons, you see, that's my finger, and you can see how small the cocoon actually is. 3 or 4 eggs will hatch. There's more than 3 or 4 eggs, but 3 or 4 worms usually hatch out of there. And so you try to keep them in there. They're really kind of visible in good light if you have better eyes than mine. I have trouble seeing them, but when I take them to schools and show the kids, they pick them out immediately. So they're really easy to see.
Where do you get them?
I bought these in a place in Bradenton, but from what I understand, she doesn't have them anymore. There's places you can order them online. You have to be very careful not to do that in the summertime because the post office doesn't always deliver them. They might leave them in their truck and go to lunch.
They're in my ground. Mine came from my ground.
Yeah, but the ones in the ground aren't the compost.
Earthworms
They
is what we have.
don't. They're not surface feeders. There's only about 7 kinds of worms out of about 6,000 species that you can use for composting. The ones in the ground do composting on their own, but it's different than the kinds that you can
So
put
you
in.
can't use that for fertilizer.
Yeah, not use it. Oh, you can use it for fertilizer. It's fantastic fertilizer, but you can't put them in the bin. They won't survive.
Oh, so if you're just doing what I'm doing,
Yeah, the way you're doing
because
it's
they're making a
fine,
lot
yeah.
of, I mean, they're making rich.
How much more efficient is that than the other told about?
But she's
What
gonna.
was your question?
How much more efficient is that than what you're?
It depends on your.
I think it's less about
Your needs.
efficiency, yeah, and more about fit. You
So
know,
all you have in here
Yeah.
are the worms, the garbage, and the newspaper. Yep.
And they're byproduct.
And all you have.
Yeah.
And
There's no odor? I never get an odor. Right now I can smell a little bit of citrus. You can't put too much citrus in because too much isn't good for them. But I had a couple of peels in here, and you're always keeping it covered up with the bedding. And there's no smell. I never get a smell. One time I had a smell when I put some cabbage products in there, and I made the mistake to uncover it to see, and yeah, then it stunk for a few days. Well, but I just put the bedding back over it, and then it didn't smell anymore. So you always are keeping the food buried. I never get flies when I leave it inside.
What about other animals?
Nothing. If you left it outside and you left it uncovered, you would get animals in there because there's armadillos digging holes all over my yard and they're after the worms and grubs. But as long as you're keeping it covered outside, and that's why you even put the screen on the holes because you don't want a problem. So, but otherwise, there's no really problem. I don't have any problems. I've heard people get problems with fruit flies inside. If you're keeping it covered up, you're not going to get the fruit flies
I
inside
have a
either.
baby possibly.
Yeah. Oh.
Not that.
Yeah.
Regular.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, but I'm going to stop so Tracy can talk to you about the composting because there's efficiencies to both. It's not like one's better than the other. It's what works for you. This works for me because I don't generate enough materials for the composting bin. Didn't have a place for one. I will eventually, but for right now I just didn't. So this worked for me.
yeah, and composting is like it's on a continuum, really. You know, there's this scale, there's your backyard, you have your own bin, there's community scale, which is what I'm coordinating, and then there's large scale, like municipal, where you have whole cities doing, just like with recycling, curbside pickup, and mounds almost as big as this building. So there's different, and there's just a different fit for different people, and that's why we like to have this whole spectrum, is so that we can still get people to enter in any place that is appropriate for them. And so with the community composting, it's basically looking at backyard scale compost with a lot of support. So some people, don't have any experience with compost, or they don't have a lot of material to work with, or they're just curious how it works. They want to see it before they launch right into it and do it. And so what we're doing is setting up community scale compost bins where people from certain neighboring communities can come and bring their materials, and then we help them compost it, and then we give it back to them.
How
So,
does my neighborhood get one?
well, let's talk after and talk about what's possible for your neighborhood. So we would like to see a lot of these popping up, around all communities. Really, there's a national movement around community composting that you'll see happening all over the U.S. So people are deciding to take compost into their own hands, literally, and turning it into a resource for the community. So this is some compost that came from a project in Gillespie Park. So this is all the food scraps that the surrounding neighbors brought to us that we transformed into compost, and how they chose to use it. Some people got it back individually. They have a butterfly garden that they're growing there, and some of that material went into the butterfly garden, and then some of the residents are growing gardens in their backyard, and they want some of the compost for themselves. But it's simple. I mean, the basic premise for compost is that you bring together nitrogen sources, green materials, which in our case is the kitchen scraps, because we have a solution for the yard scraps, right? It's getting picked up and it's getting repurposed and that kind of thing. We don't have a solution for our food scraps. So we take kitchen scraps, and then people bring these to us. We weigh them so we know how many pounds. We've over 2,000 pounds in Gillespie Park so far. 7,000 pounds through all our programs, and then we add it with browns, mix it, right, and then we end up getting compost. So browns, this is a carbon source. So these, you want these two working together in your compost bin, and this can be, in some cases there's extra brown material in the park itself. In one of the school programs, there's brown material falling off the trees all the time, right? It's like, that's nature's already composting. The tree's growing, it's dropping the leaves, it turns into compost and goes back to the tree.
Sometimes people use newspapers, leaves.
Yeah,
straw,
exactly. Yeah.
kind of material.
Food soiled cardboard, like pizza boxes, if it goes to the recycle facility, sometimes the food can contaminate a whole bin of cardboard, where you can just put it in the compost bin and turn it into.
But if the food is like a pizza thing, got cheese on it, just oil in it, which is no good.
Yeah. If it's highly saturated, then we don't want a lot of oil. So one thing that we want to keep out of the compost bins, we want to keep out fats and oils and butters and cheeses and heavy meats. Bread and crackers is fine. Like ultimately, they come from seeds, right? And seeds are plants, and plants, are really good to compost. So you can pass that around. This is the kind of stuff that people are collecting. And it hits a lot of different solutions. So if you want to divert waste from the landfill, if you want to extend the life of your landfill, which we all do, because no one wants to build a new landfill in their backyard, you take your food scraps, you put them in your own backyard. Financially, all of those materials, we invested in them already. We paid for them. There are nutrients in them that we're just sending away. In the landfill, it gets mixed with old plastic chairs and old, dirty diapers or whatever. You can't use those nutrients again. They're gone, right? We want to keep them, and then we can transform them into something that can be used for your gardens, or even if you're not a gardener.
The wood that down the hospitals,
It'll eventually break down.
It's brown. Come from a tree. It's a carbon. It's a fibrous material. It'll break down at a slower rate than a piece of lettuce, but we want different decomposition rates with some of the materials.
heats it up.
Huh?
Heats it up.
Yeah, right. Together it does. And then, compost also, some things that I've been discovering as I got deeper into this process is, we're in Florida. I spent a lot of time out of Florida, although I was born and raised here, and we're surrounded by water, right? And so, compost, it makes your soil more spongy, right? So you can hold more water right in place. And also, if you use a little bit more compost and a little less fertilizers or pesticides, then when it rains, we have less runoff going into the stormwater, ending up in the bays and that kind of thing. So there's multiple studies around how compost can also bind to some of the heavy things, the heavy metals, and the things that come from petroleum byproducts on the roads, to help bind it and keep it out of the food, out of the plants and animals and that kind of thing. So it has a lot of magical properties, and as you can see, I could talk about this forever. So I'm going to stop and see if you have questions for either of us.
Citrus, you mentioned.
Okay.
not much.
Not too much.
Not too
And from what I've read, not too much in a
Not
compost
too much.
bin. You don't put anything, tons of any one thing. You would divide it up.
You want it diverse, yeah.
Is it better to chop it up?
So the smaller the pieces, the more digestible it is, and the quicker you're going to have compost. Like for instance, she was saying that
There's more
she,
surface area.
yeah, and she blends up her material, so she's going to get material faster.
Broken down faster.
Yeah.
They eat it much faster because they don't have to wait for other microbes. And the same thing in a compost bin. It's going to break down faster. But
Nobody's eating it.
no matter what size, it's still going to happen.
And like for some of the folks that are entering compost for the first time, it's enough just to get people to collect food scraps. So we're not actually going to do the chopping, but once they get into it, a lot of people are like, chop it all up, I'm going to fit more in my bucket, so people start getting fired up about it.
They get buckets.
So, yeah,
They get buckets. They get buckets. They get a sign that
says
says what goes in. They come to the compost site.
They bring it to you.
They bring it to me. We weigh it. I show them how to deposit it. And usually all the programs start with 3 months of full hands-on. Once a week you come, we show you, and then I back off to I fade that out so that people can come whenever they want, because now they know what to do. I dump, I cover with browns, I weigh, and I go. So it's just starting with a lot of support, and then fading that out, but then Sunshine Community Compost continues to manage the material so that we can get good compost. Does that make sense?
So does the community make a contract?
At this point, no. A contract could be made. There's a number of ways that it could be done. Yeah, but right now it's year by year, and as funding is available.
It's not done by the individual, it's done by the community.
It's a community effort. That's right. Yeah.
How large community? Cut off number of people to make a community?
What would
Like
be
20 people?
20 people would be optimal. It would be optimal to have 20, but we've started with much less because sometimes you need the first adopters to inspire the neighbors, and the neighbors inspire the neighbors, and we see that. The first adopters are the ones that make it happen. And now we have 20, 25, we have people that move, that come back,
Where do they come to?
right now, there's just a couple of projects in the city of Sarasota, Gillespie Park. Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about all of them. Yeah. So,
My active
Thank you.
reach and
yeah,
Sarasota.
thank you.